You may be seated, ladies and gentlemen. Prime Minister, the Honourable Gaston Brown, Prime Minister of Antigua Barbuda, the Honourable Roosevelt Skerritt, Prime Minister of the Commonwealth of Dominica, Prime Minister Philip J. Pierre, Prime Minister of St. Lucia, the Honourable Dickon Mitchell, Prime Minister of Grenada, the Honourable Garth Wilkin, Attorney General of St. Kitts Nevis. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. And if you're just joining us for the afternoon session, welcome to CIS25. We, of course, this morning looked at the regional regulatory framework. We had a round table. We'll get an update on that a little later in this first session post-lunch. But this morning, or this afternoon, sorry, I haven't had lunch yet, we will, of course, be hearing from the Honourable Prime Minister, the Honourable Gaston Brown. He'll be the first to address us this hour. The way this afternoon will run is that we will hear from Prime Minister Brown, then we'll get a recap from Ambassador St. Just, see what happened this morning during our regional regulatory framework discussions. Then we'll have our connection activity, or speed dating activity as we've been calling it all day. And then we will be back to hear from the leaders of government, the heads of delegations in this segment. So this morning we delved into the regulatory framework, the regulations that are to come. It's now my pleasure to introduce the Prime Minister of Antigua Barbuda, the Honourable Gaston Brown, to speak to us. He's led Antigua Barbuda since 2014, where his government has focused on economic diversification, climate resilience, and strengthening the Citizenship by Investment program as a cornerstone of national development. On his leadership, Antigua's CIP has maintained its position as one of the region's most respected programs, with a commitment to rigorous due diligence and strategic investment for sustainable growth. As a host nation for CIS25, Prime Minister Brown's vision for regional collaboration brings us together today in pursuit of common interests and standards and shared prosperity. To speak to us for the next few minutes, please help me to welcome Prime Minister the Honourable Gaston Brown.
Thank you very much, Mr. Master of Ceremony. I acknowledge my colleague heads and certainly all of the other members on the platform and all of the other distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I especially want to thank my colleague heads for joining to Antigua to participate in this very important Caribbean Investment Conference. We have held these conferences over a number of years. I recall I last attended one in St. Kitts some years ago. And now that we're hosting, I'm very happy that we're able to host this very important conference that is happening literally at an inflection point in which we are facing a number of challenges, especially external challenges. But we have to remain undaunted by the fact that these programs are very important, and no matter what the challenges may be, we must position ourselves to surmount the challenges and to ensure the sustainability and stability of our programs. We all know that the programs evidently would have contributed significantly to the socioeconomic development of the respective countries. In fact, without the revenues from these CIP programs within the respective countries, our economic prospects, our social development would have been significantly different. And it means, therefore, that we have to continue to fight to protect these programs. And even where we enjoy certain benefits, including the Shenzhen visa-free access, we have to ensure that we continue to advocate to maintain those privileges. But in the event we were to lose those privileges, we must ensure the continuity of our programs, because at the end of the day, people will always move. There will always be a requirement for investment immigration programs. And I'm sure that within the Caribbean region, we offer a quality of life to people that they cannot have elsewhere. And if we're able to attract new talents, new investments, obviously we'll have to continue to improve the living standards of our people, while at the same time allowing others to invest in our respective countries and to help to grow and develop our countries. So we must remain undaunted, and we also must ensure that we continue to strengthen the legal and regulatory frameworks covering these programs. to make sure that our programs are beyond reproach and that we can stand in any forum and to defend the integrity of our immigration investment programs. So again, I just want to take this opportunity to welcome everyone to this very important initiative. As we continue to engage, I'm sure we'll get involved in more in-depth discussions about how we should structure respective programs, the issues in terms of the regulatory commission, how we structure it, and even the various, let's say, micro aspects of our various programs, how we can integrate them and harmonize them, but while at the same time looking at the issue of competitiveness and to make sure we do not price ourselves out of the market and that our programs do not become extremely bureaucratic to the extent that they do not meet the needs of various investors. But at the same time, we have to accept that even without the external pressures from the European Union, the United Kingdom, and others, that it is in our interest to continue to strengthen these programs and to make sure that we can stand up to public scrutiny, and for us to ensure that any gap or gaps that exist within our respective programs, that we continue to plug those gaps. And I also want to commend my colleague and heads who are here. In fact, we had an apology from Prime Minister of St. Kitts Nevis, Dr. Ju, who had another engagement, had to travel to Cuba today, otherwise he would have been here. The fact that we have four of the Prime Ministers here would confirm how seriously we take these programs. And I think it's perhaps the first for a long time that we've had 4 of the 5 Prime Ministers at any of these fora. So again, you can see our full commitment from the level of the heads right down to the various units, the head of the various units. And again, we're here to collaborate and to ensure that we come up with strategies to ensure the sustainability and stability of our programs. So once again, welcome, and do enjoy the Antigua and Barbuda hospitality, which is clearly unparalleled. Thank you very much.
I concur. Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister. The Prime Minister will also tell you that the CIE in Antigua and Barbuda was his original idea that was borrowed or stolen. Right, Prime Minister? Both. All right. Thank you so much, sir. You shared some of the thoughts that we actually shared this morning, our framework discussions, or regulatory framework discussions, issues of integrity and stability and sustainability, and how we can, of course, be innovative in moving the programs forward. So we thank you for echoing some of those thoughts without even having attended this morning. To give us an update, though, a full update on what transpired this morning, as you can see, joining the heads of countries and delegations on stage, the heads of the various CIP units, CIP, CIU, CBI units, investment migration programs. Yes, we still kind of finalize the actual terms across the 5 states. And we'll invite His Excellency Ambassador St. Just. Of course, he will come now to bring us a high-level brief, basically an encapsulation of what transpired this morning, so that the heads get a better understanding as to what transpired. Please welcome Ambassador St. Just.
Thank you very much. Well, I do have to use my notes because I was on the stage, and it's a very difficult task, Your Excellencies, to actually speak and take notes this morning. So if you may permit me to read some of the recap. In keeping order, I bring greetings, as the Prime Minister Gaston indicated, from the Honorable Prime Minister Dr. Terence Ju, who unfortunately was not able to be in here. And I also echo the same sentiments of the integral and important aspect of these programs, and most importantly, obviously, to St. Kitts and Nevis, to all the region. We had a very robust discussion. I think everyone clearly demonstrated around their openness. I think it was, if I may use the word, it was definitely a level of transparency. We started the conversations around the regional regulator, and we were graced with the Eastern Caribbean governor, Dr. Timothy Antoine, who unfortunately was not here. He also was in Washington, D.C., and so he joined us via virtual, as well as the legal representative for the regional regulator, Lydia Elliott. The conversation really was around the what and the why for the regional regulator. And I think it was very clear the importance of having the regulatory framework, and even more so, the structural guidance of having this industry under the guidance of a regulation process. The conversation that the regulators provided, the regional regulator, really was around the why. Also discussed some of the structural components. We talked about licensing oversight. We talked about the governance of what's needed. But most importantly was around the draft that would be required, and also to give a specific timeline as to when that will take place. I think they provided an overview on the discovery that was entailed, met with clearly mainly all of the key stakeholders, the practitioners in the program, but also the citizens of the various jurisdictions to get an intel of what this program means to them. And I think it was very clear that having that input was very important to help the framers get to a point of getting to a reasonable draft that would have, I would say, a voice of everyone, and that was very critical. The timeline provided in terms of getting a draft by May, and with a final by July, and looking to have it enacted by end of 2025. I think it really covers why the regional regulators, considering the various international pressures and the volatility, and I think it was very clear in the conversation that all stakeholders saw the importance and welcome the regulatory framework. And I think that in of itself talk about the testament of the sustainability, but even more so the aspect of ensuring that we have some reasonable level playing field to ensure that we have a one voice with these programs. We then continued in the panel discussion, which was again quite robust, and the conversation really centered around the volatility and the pressure from the international market. It is very clear that there's significant changes that has occurred, and conversations specifically pose, I would say, a perspective on the interest of applicants now into these programs. We also had discussions around the what if, and the what if in terms of the risk management. If we were to lose visa-free access, what is the plan? What is the now plan B for these programs with all the various pressures and all the concerns we had? How do we ensure the continuation perhaps in a different paradigm shift? I think the conversations where everyone had their perspective and input to ensure that we are taking a totality voice of our international partners, demonstrating the continual due diligence and the security around the program, because we are very clear of the importance from an investment perspective for these jurisdictions, but also ensuring that their voices are taken into consideration, because we place such a vested interest in protecting not only our borders, but also their borders based on this program. I think we also had conversation around the community engagement. One of the things we've heard from the regional regulators part of the discovery is the citizens of these countries, what is their perspective and their perception of these programs in terms of, do they understand the value proposition? Do they understand the importance? And ensuring that there's an education element that we, in terms of practitioners, can continue to support in these programs. And I think lastly, what was very clear in what we discussed this morning was, and I think everyone sort of in the same harmony, this industry has changed. This industry continues to change. And we have to be agile, and we have to be ready to pivot at a moment's notice. And it's important that there's continual dialogue and continual discussions around the table, because the volatility is so great from various perspectives that we must have these dialogue in a continuous moment, not just at moments where there is some type of turbulence. So I hope my fellow colleagues would agree that I summarized while I spoke as best as I can.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Your colleague heads were shaking their heads and they were nodding. So I think they concur as well. They did say, I will echo the political will that the Interim Regulatory Commission enjoyed from the heads of the 5 CIP or CIP territories. So kudos to you, members, heads of countries. There was also buy-in from the leaders of the opposition. So I will please tell you that as well, that you're mindful that your political opponents are also in agreement on some of the issues. To bear that in mind, because they were an integral part of the stakeholder sessions. Right, Mrs. Elliott? Right, Lieutenant Colonel Croft? Sorry? Tongue-in-cheek buying. All right. It's a good thing these are closed sessions. This afternoon's sessions are called stakeholder impact sessions. As you would have heard this morning, and Ambassador St. Just mentioned the need for the involvement of all the stakeholders, their participation in the way forward. What we will do next is that we will invite us to traverse from this room to where we had lunch. It's been transformed, where we'll have some connection activities. What we will do is that we will have heads of countries, we will have heads of CIP programs, CBI programs, we will have some assigned hosts as well to 8 tables. And each of us will choose a number that correlates to that table, and there will be some discussion points at each table. And through those discussions, we will be able to flesh out some of the challenges we're facing as a region, and we'll perhaps be able to put our heads together to come up with the way forward. And as Dr. Henry alluded to earlier, what happens if our programs look different in the next 5 years to come? Or if we don't have a program, what do we then do in terms of pivoting? So, the heads of government will be at tables, heads of CIP programs will be at tables, assigned hosts at tables, and each of us at 8 tables. The catch here is that there will only be discussions for 5 minutes at a time. And so there is a very large timer. Now, I must tell you that we have not been very good at keeping time today. So, we will need to do a much better job going forward. I'll try to police the process with the police officers we have on the outside. And each table, you're allowed 5 minutes. Once the 5 minutes have been completed and the bell, the very loud small bell is rung, then we'll move on to the next table. So table 1 will then move to table 2, 2 to 3, etc. Table 8 will go to 1. Am I clear? Crystal? After 5 minutes, table 1, you will move to the next table. So table 1 will go to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, 5 to 6, 6 to 7, 8 will go back to 1. And we'll just keep it going. So each person will get a chance to sit at 8 tables for 5 minutes. 8 by 5, 40. Getting into math here. So that's what we will do next. Just waiting on a signal that we are ready. Next door. And we will then move to that. So we'll ask the heads to go down the center aisle. You will be escorted to your tables, and then we'll have the heads of the CIP programs, and then we can tell the rest of the audience when to move. A lot of instructions, I know, but we'll take it in stages. Prime Minister, I think we've already heard your comments, so we can then move on. You will yield. All right. So let's go in alphabetical order. Honorable Roosevelt Skerrit, are you ready, sir? Yes. So please invite the Prime Minister of Government, Honorable Roosevelt Skerrit.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be in Antigua and Barbuda, and to meet my colleague, friend, Prime Minister Gaston Brown. My other colleagues were here, and of course, the General of St. Kitts and Nevis, the heads of the units, and all of you present. I think it's important for us to
have these conversations and to allow different views to contend and to have an introspective look at our program and to determine how do we position our program to allow it to be sustained for the next several decades. I also want to especially recognize our friends from the US Embassy and of course from the EU office in Barbados, serving the Eastern Caribbean as well. And the UK is here. Where's our friends from the UK? Okay, our friends from the UK, welcome. So we're very happy to have you there. The reality is we need to have more people speaking about the virtues of these programs other than governments. That's part of the problem. And it is a challenge you have in the Caribbean where entities and the private sector, the legal fraternity, they benefit. But when it is to stand in defense and in promotion of these programs, of these policies and programs, we don't hear from them. It's similar to climate change. When the government speaks about climate change and the impact it has on our survival, it is the same thing with regard to the blacklisting. Until a businessman finds that he cannot, if your country is blacklisted, and he tries to do some banking in some other country, then he calls the Prime Minister and says, well, look, I tried to open an account in some other country and I cannot do it because they say we're blacklisted. And so we have to be able to speak in promotion and defense of these programs more broadly from the government. And to speak about the importance of these programs. When you look at, for example, in my country where we were impacted by two successive natural disasters, in 2015, 2017, and 2019 COVID, which lasted for about 3 years. With Erica in 2015, we were impacted by 90% of our GDP. I had to relocate completely to large villages, build homes for everyone, provide them with income support for a couple of years until we were able to get them into their homes. Pay rent for them, until we were able to provide homes there. And then 2 years later, we were impacted by 226% of our GDP. 90% of our homes were affected. Agriculture decimated. And the reality is, the pledges that you will get will take more than 5 or 6 years to get to the gestation period. But you cannot wait for 5 years to build a home for somebody who's homeless. And neither can you wait for 5 years to ensure that people's livelihoods are reinstated. And the reality is, if developed countries have themselves engaged in such a program, then it tells you that it is an important program that brings in foreign exchange and creates jobs, especially in jurisdictions or states or in localities where there are not enough investment taking place to create economic activity in those states and those provinces, to create jobs and to give people a sense of hope and confidence that they're part of the dream that our respective countries espouse. Now, I believe that in the marketplace we have made a fundamental error. And that fundamental error is in itself coming back to hunters. Unfortunately, we marketed and promoted our programs too much on the presence of visa-free access. In my view, I've always said so publicly, there was always a silly idea to do because our programs were not created to promote visa-free access. It was to bring in foreign exchange in our countries. And the reality is, we were doing well. And we have done well on these programs. And I think that idea of promoting and marketing the program from a visa-free standpoint has caused some consternation in countries where we have visa-free access. And rightly or wrongly so. That's for another time we can have those conversations. And so we have to promote these programs more from the perspective of economic growth, job creation, fighting the impacts of climate change and building mitigation and adaptation mechanisms and resilience in our economies to sort of try to climate-proof our countries to the best of our abilities, to reduce our external debts, because all of us have had to borrow. In my country, 85% of our national debt is as a result of response to external shocks and natural disasters. And if you go to borrow from the World Bank to build a road that has been washed away by a storm, it will take you 10 years to access the money. What does that mean for economic activity? So when people refer you to the World Bank, or refer you to the IMF, or refer you to other investment banking, they have to pay attention to the access to these funds and how quickly you can access those funds. And then so we have to understand this. And so it's important for us to have those conversations. I do not believe that we should give one the impression that if we were to lose visa-free access, then that's the end of the program. I don't believe so. And neither am I advocating to our friends that they should remove visa-free access from us, because we have relations. There are issues more urgent in the world that we should believe that we need to work on to address, and to have a collective voice in addressing it. Every nation in this world is linked. This is a global community. And I remember our Prime Minister in the 1980s, Eugenia Charles, may her soul rest in peace. She was my Prime Minister then. Who said to a government, well, look, if you are going to destroy our bananas, then I may go home and tell my people to plant marijuana, ganja, because you are going to take away from us a major source of revenue, which will decimate our countries. And we saw it happen. In St. Lucia's case, we have moved from 20,000 banana farmers to maybe a handful today. In our case, we moved from about 15,000 farmers to a handful today, revenues over $100 million because of the action at the WTO. And then the World Bank came to us in the 90s and said, look, we're going to do a study to advise you on some resilient approach towards building your economies. And the World Bank presented a document on creating the International Financial Services. And we all went at the same time into the financial services. And we were doing well. In Antigua's case, Antigua went largely with internet gaming, where the Antiguan employee was raking in more than the Prime Minister at the time, any junior functionary at those entities. And young people who come out of school, from universities and from colleges, and were being engaged at high rates in management positions in the financial services, working in offshore banks, working in gaming industry, and were able to build their homes, pay off their student loans, etc., etc. So we all went into this. But the system has become so over-regulated, and I can tell you I am a strong advocate for regulation. I believe that we need to have strong systems, we need to be prudent, we need to be responsible with everything we do. But you had our jurisdiction over-regulated while others did the things that we were doing with no regulations. And this is why I believe that the approach that we have taken, and I want to commend my colleagues for agreeing on having a regional approach to some core elements of our program. Core elements of our program. And with the regional regulation. And I can say to you that there is absolute 100 political will to carry this out. And I want to say to us that we're not doing this because of no pressure. We do it because we believe that it is the right thing to do, and it is the right path to follow. And in this system, the more you have layers of oversight, it is better for the system. And we believe that we need to have those layers. I want to specifically thank our friends from the United States who came to us, had concerns. We invited the Treasury Department to come visit our jurisdictions. They came in, similar to how the IMF does it, Article 4 consultation. And they came to us with 6 points that they believe will address the concerns that they have. And I see my friend from the European Union is there, and I'm saying that is the same approach we need to have with the EU. You have come in, we've had some excellent relations. I want to say to all of you, the EU has been exceptional with the engagement. They have come a long way, because back in the days they would take decisions without consulting us, but now there is strong consultation with them, all fairness, and even on this point. They understand the importance of it. But they have concerns, and we need to sit down with them and to see how we can iron out those concerns. But what we would like to have, similar with the UK as well, is to come to say, look, these are the concerns we have. These are the 5 concerns we have, and these are the 10 points we believe that you can implement that will allay our concerns. But as it is now, we're hearing of concerns, but we're not hearing of declared actions that we can take. Because even if the regulatory approach we've taken, within the regulation system we've taken, we have not heard to say, well, okay, well, if you go ahead with this, this should help, this should set aside our concerns, go ahead, if you need technical support, we'll provide it to you, etc., etc., etc. And this is the kind of engagement. And I want to say to our partners and to all of you here that we are prepared to engage in a transparent, very open, very forthright, very sincere, very honest discussion in this matter, so that we can work together towards addressing any concerns anybody may have, or any country may have, in advancing this program. But this program, I am not a pessimist. I don't believe my job doesn't allow me to be. My position doesn't allow me to be. So I'm not pessimistic about it. There are things that we need to do, that we are seeking to do, and there are things that we have to do, that we are doing, and there are some outstanding things that we need to do, that we are pursuing. And we'd like to engage our partners in that same spirit, so that we can set aside the concerns that anyone may have. We go to the United States in May, we'll meet the Secretary of State, and we'll have the opportunity to share them what we're doing, how we're doing it, and hoping that they can continue on the path which we have traversed thus far with the Treasury Department on addressing the concerns of the United States. And what we have in the United States is a peer review. So every year we meet and we review where we are, and we have said to them, in Dominica's case, in every one of our cases, that you can come in independent of us and to examine what you're doing, and where you pick up any shortcomings, let us know so that those can be addressed. So I don't want to be long. I want you to share these points with you, and hoping that we can continue with the dialogue. The dialogue is only continuing. But I don't want, we must not walk around like, our shoulders are broken and we are about to lose. I don't believe so. We have to do what we have to do, and we'll do what we have to do, irrespective of what it is or who it is, because it is the right thing to do. But I agree with what the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda has said, that, and of course my friend Ambassador, that there has been a slowdown in the demand, and I believe in large measure because those who are in the field, so to speak, the practitioners are giving this pessimistic view. Because the reality is, and I've been around for some time, that in the early days of this program, people were not applying to this program to go to travel in anyone's country. They got into this program as insurance, meaning that they will afford person's country and in certain parts of the world that you can be told to leave, by a moment's notice, or they wanted to access better universities for their children, etc., etc. It was never to go to anybody's country. And I think that we need to disabuse that notion that our program are tied to the hip with visa-free. And the quicker we can disabuse our minds on this, is the better we can find a path towards its sustainability. And working with our partners to address their concerns and so on. From where I sit, I don't believe, I don't believe that our friends in Europe would take any negative action from the EU against the program. They have concerns that will sit to them. But I believe that there's a greater sensibility resident in Brussels that they'll understand how important this program is. The impact that a visa-free will have is a negative connection that it will bring, or effects, or reflection that it will bring. But we do hope that no punitive action that will be taken against the program, because it will not be in the interest of the world, especially when we talk about climate change and the impact of climate change, and we having to mobilize resources. Because let's be frank, commitments are made to us where climate change is concerned, and they're not forthcoming. We are faced with a hurricane season every 6 months, not every year, every 6 months. And it's a harsh reality. And with the challenge that we have with drug trafficking and small arms, dramatically increasing our spend on national security, I spend more money on the Coast Guard than I spend on the police and land, seeking to interdict drugs and small arms that are destined not for my country, but for other parts of the world. But we recognize that we have a duty and obligation, not only to ourselves, but to the rest of the world. And we remain absolutely committed to the security, not only our jurisdiction, but the world. And I think there has to be an appreciation for this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister Skerritt. We now move to the Prime Minister of...
Sorry, Mr. Master, sorry.
Yes.
The distinguished Prime Minister of Dominica has spoken for all of us. We want to have a more interactive engagement. We'd like to hear the views of others, to include those who represent our international partners. But before we do so, I just want to emphasize or reinforce a few points that were made by the distinguished Prime Minister of Dominica. The harmonization that is taking place currently is not a new concept. I recall the first investment meeting, CIP investment meeting that we held in Antigua back in 2015, that we tried to get a consensus on the harmonization of our respective programs to include common pricing, as well as having a regulatory commission. I recall at the time, Roosevelt and I had decided that we'd do it. And we had agreed to increase the price from 100,000 up to about 200,000, maybe 250. But there was a particular Prime Minister who said that he wanted to drop his to 100,000, and that's what killed the deal at the time. Well, I said former Prime Minister for that matter. Obviously, you have full consensus among the 5 member states. We are collaborating, so we're in a very good space now in which we recognize the need for us to collaborate and to cooperate with each other to ensure that we have a strong regulatory authority to oversee our respective programs, and at the same time to ensure that there is harmonization right across our programs. I want to make a point here though that as we speak about sustainability, the issue of being competitive is very important. And I'm saying this from the standpoint, for example, that whereas we're encouraged to virtually double the investment in the we call it the National Development Fund, a contribution fund from 100,000, or more than double for that matter. In the case of Antigua and Barbuda, it's 230,000. We also have to determine in the future whether or not $230,000 is indeed competitive and if it is sustainable. So it is not appropriate, for example, for any individual, any of the stakeholders, to decide that it should be 300,000 or 500,000. There has to be greater consultations and even some market testing to determine whether or not we can sustain the proposed pricing. And you have to look at it in the context that the US EB5, for example, 500,000 US dollars, you can get your stay, which leads to citizenship. And we have to also understand too, that in the case of these small islands within the Caribbean, CIS Caribbean, we do not have a lot to offer. And this idea, for example, that we should do a residency program rather than a citizenship program, we'll not be able to compete with the European Union, we'll not be able to compete with the US, we'll get no business. So this idea that, because we give citizenship within a short period of time, in the case of Antigua and Barbuda, there's a 5-day residency requirement. There's a need to increase it. I won't speak for my other colleagues, but certainly we don't have an issue, provided it's reasonable. We have to understand too that investors, generally speaking, would not want to spend more than a week or two vacationing. And if we're going to make it 35 days, 40 days, 6 months, then evidently it will not work. So the point I'm making, there's no one-size-fits-all approach that will work for us. You have to take into consideration our peculiarities and to help us to build sustaining programs that are truly competitive. So as we speak about sustainability, the issue of having competitive programs is ultimately what will ensure the sustainability of these programs. And the other issue that I would like to raise here too is the issue which Roosevelt spoke about concerning, let's say, opposition parties within the region. Unfortunately, our programs have been mired in partisan politics. And a lot of the propaganda that is generated within our domestic space, it is fed into the international system and would have given rise to a number of unsubstantiated speculations about programs that are not properly regulated. We believe and we understand that in order to have sustainable programs, they must be properly managed. We understand that we have a shared common security interests with our regional and international partners, and we will not compromise on that shared interest. But there must be some level of trust. Our international partners must understand that we are here to work with them, and we require their support as well. Wherever they see gaps in our programs, we're willing to cooperate. We've been cooperating with the US, we've been cooperating with the UK, certainly the European Union. And I don't think that the relationship should be based on one of threats. It should be one in which if you see any particular gaps, that you ask us to fill those gaps, but not to threaten us with the withdrawal of visa-free access. At the end of the day, people always move. And if they can't move legally, they'll move illegally. And there's no doubt that when it comes to migration, that the issue of managed migration is ultimately what is sustainable. It is ultimately what will help to preserve global relations among countries, rather than to have prohibitive structures. And certainly, even though Prime Minister Skerritt indicated that our programs are not necessarily being marketed as mobility programs, the reality is investors or immigration investors, they require mobility. And if countries within the Caribbean haven't enjoyed great mobility over the decades, we've always had good mobility, and it is certainly one of the attractiveness of our respective programs. It's not that these individuals are seeking to go and take up residency or citizenship in the European Union or in the United Kingdom. In any event, they can't go into the United States without a visa anyway, so I don't see any fundamental risk there. And this notion that they're using our programs to launder money, you're spending $200,000 to acquire citizenship. How the issue of money laundering comes into play here? I don't understand it. I mean, if they have transactions that are taking place outside of the payment for the citizenship, then I can understand. So there needs to be continuous dialogue to deal with a lot of these speculations and misinformation so that we can be on the same page and that all of the unnecessary speculations could be put to rest and that, various international partners in particular will understand that we are committed to securing their borders as much as we are committed to securing ours, because we have a mutual interest. The final point I want to make here is the issue of residual risk. No program is foolproof. Canada, the United States, European Union, the United Kingdom, they all have investment immigration programs. And they have them for good reasons, primarily for economic reasons. The United States just launched a $5 million US dollar gold card. So if the issue is about capacity, then we can speak about capacity, but there's nothing fundamentally wrong or intrinsically corrupt about these programs. However, from time to time, you'll have one or two nefarious actors who may slip through the cracks. Because again, as I said before, the programs are not foolproof. Those in North America and Europe, they're not foolproof, they never will be. And you have had your issues too, just as we have had ours. In fact, I just double checked with our CIU unit head here, and she's advised me that within the last 12 years, we have had 3 or 4 individuals who are involved in financial crimes who slip through the cracks. And if 3 or 4 individuals out of thousands of individuals who would have had citizenship slip through the crack, how can anyone reasonably argue that that is a fundamental flaw? It is not. And I'm saying here that a more constructive engagement is important to make sure that we're all on the same page and that no punitive or, let's say, unnecessary punitive action is taken. And I'm hoping that we can have these type of frank engagements rather than, going around the mulberry bush with all kind of diplomatic language that eventually result in all sorts of punitive actions. Let us understand that we too deserve to be able to diversify our economies, to make money so that we can provide for people. You take away the CIP program from any one of these countries, you're plunging thousands of people into poverty. What happened now? People don't have the right to live too. You have your programs, we can't go and tell you all to shut down your programs. We don't have the power to do so. And for you to exploit your power asymmetries and tell us as small sovereign countries that we don't have any right to engage in CIP, in immigration investment programs, I think that is totally unacceptable. So I'm not trying to be controversial here, but I just want us to be very clear as to what we're doing here and to reconfirm our commitment to run well-managed, well-regulated programs and to be as transparent as possible so you can come at any point and test our programs and to confirm that we are operating our programs based on international standards. In fact, I'll say this much. Our programs are better run than those in North America and Europe. So let us be fair and let us treat each other with respect. Not because of the power asymmetry, because of your size and your power, you must think that you can just come and dictate to small island states and tell us that we should not operate CIP programs. I think it is totally inappropriate. And then if you plunge our people into poverty, what do you think is going to happen? If you lock us out of your countries and the people become poor and destitute, then they become soft on the bellies for all the nefarious activities that you're trying to avoid. So work with us so that we can strengthen the integrity of our programs, so that we can ensure that the financial system is not exploited in any way that could harm your countries or to harm our countries. And again, I just want to reiterate our full commitment in working with you to make sure that we have well-managed investment immigration programs. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to Antigua Barbuda. That's our Prime Minister there for you. I just want to give any of the other Prime Ministers a chance at all, if you want to add anything, even from your seats at all. No? All right, so they're willing to hear from you. Oh, I thought you were going to do something. All right, so let's go to the connection activity. Let me invite the heads of government to, well, we have somebody escort you down the center aisles. You can go to the room that's on the outside and then we'll populate comment. Yeah, we have mics, don't worry. The gray button. The gray button.
Hello?
Yes.
Thank you. Well, Prime Minister Scarrett, I'll take your challenge, and as a representative of private business, I'll want to say a few words about the programs. As many of you know me, I've been practicing immigration law in Canada for 33 or 34 years. I've been in the Caribbean now for 15 years. I started working with the investor immigration program in Canada, which eventually closed down, and it closed down because it was inefficiently run. You know that, you were there. It was inefficiently run. At one point, they had 50,000 families in the processing line, and they decided that they had a problem, and the only way that they could handle the problem was they canceled the program and sent the files back home to everybody, took everybody's money and just sent them on their way. Which, by the way, was an opportunity for the Caribbean because a lot of those ended up coming here. But they literally canceled 50,000 applications. The other thing about the Canadian program, and Prime Minister Brown, you were absolutely correct, that really sets apart the Caribbean. In the Caribbean, we all know, and we all can see how the due diligence on these people is being done. It's very transparent. We know the companies that do it. We know the different international organizations that are involved in it. There are many checks and balances to it. Whereas in the bigger countries, as you said, the process is totally opaque. Totally opaque. Nobody knows about it. In EP5, nobody has a clue. They don't talk about it. Nobody knows. And except for many of us know it's done badly. There was a point in the mid-90s when I was working with clients in Russia. I know it's a bad word. I would bring our clients to the Canadian embassy, and they would get within an hour residence permits, literally within an hour. No due diligence, a 3-minute interview. It was nothing. The due diligence that is being done in these programs, which is the most important thing, and the proof is in the pudding, as you said, Prime Minister, the due diligence that is being done and can be checked by anybody is the best due diligence of any immigration program anywhere in the world. Better than in Greece, where you don't need to show a police certificate. Here in banking, which everybody's worried about, you mentioned financial issues. Here in banking, when we receive a $1,000 transfer from our clients, we need to go to the bank with a police certificate saying, we're just getting paid, we're being hired by... Whereas in America, you can, whatever. But it's very important to understand that the proof is in the pudding. We can look at the, 80,000, 100,000 people who have received over the last 40 years, received citizenship by investment. And I will challenge anybody to try to put 20 people as having fallen through the cracks. They're loud, but it's maybe 10, 15. No one can find more because the system works way better than anywhere else in the world. I mean, we see it in Turkey, we see it in Greece, we see it in Portugal, where the due diligence is nowhere near this. Nowhere near this. And I think that everybody has to, not to mention the US, which also does very, we see people falling through the cracks all the time. Not to mention other ways that people enter Europe without any papers and without, and it's in the hundreds of thousands of people who the hell knows where they're coming from. So I think it's very important for us all to always emphasize that the investment is the investment. The countries need the money, and who cares really if the country needs the money? Other countries don't really care. The levels of investment are, what is really important is that you all have been doing a job that is way better than any other country. And that can be checked. Every single step of it can be checked. And the results speak for themselves. And I think that we need to, in every conversation that we have with every stakeholder, we have to remember the point. Whatever the scandals that come up every once in a while are, the due diligence has never been done badly. And the proof is in the pudding. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Questions, comments from anyone else? If you just identify where you're from as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and good afternoon to everyone. My name is Daisy Joseph Andel. I am an attorney at law. I am Grenadian born. I am resident in St. Kitts and Nevis and Grenada. And I am an authorized agent, local agent within this industry. I don't envy the job of our leaders I don't envy the job of our leaders in defending the program and showing its continuity. May I change the mic or should I just project?
I'm over to you.
I do not envy the position of our leaders in continuing in their efforts and globally and diplomatically to ensure that our programs continue and flourish. And so I do appreciate you sharing that information with us, those of us present, and in this forum where we can have this type of intimate discussion. So I also congratulate the organizers for giving us this forum. I will not delve into, whether the due diligence is great or not. As a practitioner, I think it is excellent. But I wanted to speak from where I know. Listening to the Honorable Prime Minister Dominica, there was an encouragement for greater engagement by the private sector. He called out the attorneys and that we don't come to the fight until we're affected. And I think that it is important that that changes, because this program has real, tangible significance to each individual in each of the islands, and maybe even the wider region. The effect that the funds from the program that are generated, and just from a private sector perspective, the ability to increase your earning power. And I do believe it was Prime Minister Gaston Brown that mentioned it allows you to take care of your people. I will go further to say it allows your people to take care of themselves. And that is what is so fantastic about the program. From my perspective, as an attorney, coming from a good home, good education, I had a certain earning power, yes, but I am transparent enough to say that this industry has opened up further opportunities. Opportunities to see the world, to engage, to learn. There's no education that can take the place of that global exposure. And that is what the continuity of the program is going to do for more young people. And so, yes, I will come to the fight and advocate for my colleagues to come to the table in support of the program. And so it's not the first time an initiative has been started. We have tried And we continue to try from a private sector perspective to come with a voice. Because I always think that if I speak, I reach out to one of your good leaders and 20 other people. It is much less efficient for you to deal with that issue. And so I challenge my colleagues in all of the islands to come together, band together, and see if we can speak as a voice from the private sector, local agents, marketing agents, authorized agents, so that we can aid in the growth of the program. We can aid in the protection of the program and the continuity. So it's not for me, it's for my children and their children, and what it opens up the Caribbean. It takes us, we are insular already, we are in our little bubble, and we are surrounded, by waters that some of us never cross. And this program really opens up opportunities. So that said, and maybe on the round table, I will speak to the Prime Minister of Grenada, that we do have an organization that we have put forward for Grenada. And it's not always a popular decision to take the forefront, but I think it is necessary. As regulations change, and I think regulations are necessary, we need to have a voice. We need to contribute. We are the ones who are at the forefront, so we need to participate in the discussion. And so I welcome the challenge, Prime Minister, and I'm going to come to the challenge, and there are already colleagues who have come to the challenge, and we will provide our support to you. You don't stand alone, we can't do what you do, but we provide our support. So thank you, and those are my contributions.
Thank you very much.
If I can just react to the young lady's presentation. When you speak about coming to the fight, and even what was mentioned by Prime Minister Skerritt, and I'm asking you and others to take partisan positions. What we want you to do is to engage in constructive dialogue, advocacy, routinely, to provide public education to the citizenry. Because what has happened within our respective countries is that CIP programs have become the subject of partisan battleground politics. And it is one of the areas in which political opponents have sought to label governing parties and ministers, prime ministers, as corrupt, even though there's no evidence to support their claim. And I'm of the view that these programs are so important to our respective countries that they should never be mired in partisan politics. If indeed there is any tangible evidence of corruption, fine. So we're not trying to sweep anything under the table here. But these knee-jerk, unsubstantiated claims of corruption, all they do is to create anxiety for international partners. If we hear, for example, half of the population in a particular country stating that, oh, the country is so corrupt and they're giving citizenship to crooks, you can't blame the European Union, the US, UK, Canada to be concerned and to be considering potentially punitive action. So I believe too that a lot of the injury to our respective programs is from that type of destructive local engagement. But the practitioners, those of you in the private sector, can help to steer that public discourse away from this type of destructive engagement and just to inform them. Frankly speaking, the people don't want to hear from us as heads. They don't trust us as the way they trust you. And if you as practitioners can speak dispassionately about it and to speak intelligently about the benefits and to advise them that, look, for example, issue of residual risk. How many of our people understand the issue of residual risk? That no program is foolproof and that occasionally you're going to have one or two bad files. But you do not use those one or two bad files over a decade or two to condemn a program that is so important to our respective countries. That issue I want to raise here that was raised by Yuri. On the basis, we're cooperating fully with the North Americans and the Europeans. We're strengthening our programs. We have due diligence that is better than most, if not all. We have well-managed programs. And we are attracting citizens who may, let's say, use the Shenzhen area to go shopping, to vacation. Isn't that a mutually beneficial thing to happen? Because these are wealthy people. A person who can acquire our citizenship investing $250,000, $300,000, $400,000 or more obviously is a wealthy person. And again, as I said, they're not coming here to live necessarily or to go to North America or Europe to live. In fact, if they really wanted to go to North America or Europe to live, then they apply directly to your programs. Because when you look at the differential now between our programs, it's not significantly more to get an EB5 visa or for that matter to get certain European citizenship. So the point I'm making here is that the focus ought to be on having good collaboration between the Caribbean countries, the Europeans and the North Americans to make sure that we all have well-managed investment immigration programs that will be mutually beneficial. So it's not just beneficial to us, because when they travel to North America and they buy all of your luxury goods, their Louis Vuitton, their Christian Dior and so on, it's big money they're spending, supporting your industry, supporting jobs. So perhaps the lens through which many of you are looking at these programs is somewhat flawed, and that if it is a more cooperative approach, and one in which we continue to be very open and transparent with you, we ask you to come and examine our books, examine our processes, then there needs not to be this type of knee-jerk reaction. So again, I believe that a more collaborative, a more cooperative approach will be beneficial to all of us, and clearly there will be no need for any punitive action.
Thank you. Thank you, Pierre. I totally agree. Last year we mentioned it in Grenada that politicians should stop playing political football with this industry. That damages much more than anything else that we're doing. Now, the industry is changing and the world is changing very quickly. The example of Canada is that it was too big to change. Caribbean islands have the opportunity, and the decision makers on a panel like this for the first time I have seen in 15 years, to make those decisions and those changes much more effectively. Today, you're competing with the President Donald Trump, who goes on TV every week and wants to attract people at $5 million. In the same time, I'm speaking to 3 Republican senators who have no idea what they have to write as a law in the next 3 weeks of how to draft it. So, in the regards, I think small countries are doing a much better job than big countries. But the world is changing as well. 20 years ago, it was mainly Chinese and, as we said, mobility, people from the Middle East who needed access to visa-free. If you look at your books of clients today, and every CIO unit should have that statistic, you have more and more clients that do not need mobility, that comes with passports that are better than yours. Europeans, Americans, so what are the reasons these people are investing? Today you have interviews mandatory. Why don't you ask the question during these interviews? Can you please tell us for the 5 points, why are you investing in this program? Mobility, security, doomsday, quality of life, retirement. You'll have a better answer than what we're all estimating could be, maybe, if we. And from tomorrow, the European Union will have ETIAS. They will be able to check before anybody with any passport that has a visa-free, before they enter, they'll be able to qualify that person if it's somebody they want to have or not want to have. So I think that technology and reality in geopolitics are changing very quickly, and you need to adapt, you need to review laws, and you need to all stay together, and sometimes causing the hypocrisy of the big countries. Thank you.
Thank you. Prime Minister Mitchell.
Mic check, 1, 2. All right, thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. Afternoon to our host, Prime Minister, and colleague Prime Ministers, Attorney General from St. Kitts, heads of the investment migration industry. I'm using that word deliberately. Because I think, I share Prime Minister Skerritt's view that I'm an optimist, and if I wasn't, I think my job forces me to be. So there's some statistics I was reading, they might be a little outdated, prior to getting here, which says the investment migration industry is a $20 billion industry. And I think collectively we may have 5% of it. So really and truly, obviously the other 95% exists elsewhere. And the notion, I think, the comments about the visa and the visa-free access and the panic every time somebody says they're going to revoke visas and so on, I think still means we, perhaps psychologically, mentally, our outlook is one of being negative, where we feel a visa is automatically linked to an investment migration industry, and I don't think it is. And has been pointed out with electronic travel authorization likely to become the norm, not just in Europe or Canada. America already has it. It will become the norm globally. And there's an opportunity for us in the region, whether we are part of an investment migration industry or not, to also think about those issues. Because insecurity anywhere is insecurity everywhere. And we need to make sure that our border migration systems, or control systems, or immigration systems are second to none, is part and parcel of what, to me, will give us the opportunity to demonstrate to our partners, hypocrisy aside, that we are committed to ensuring that we take both their security and our security as a necessity. Because in our case, we are too small to afford insecurity. There's no place to run to in the Caribbean. In Europe, you could probably run from one country to the next. In North America, you could run from one state to the next. So I think it's important from an industry point of view for us to be frankly a little more confident, a little more positive, and accept that this is an industry. It's not a program. It's not a scheme. It's not something some politician cooked up because he and his friends wanted to buy some super yacht and sail away to God knows where. It's an industry. And I think if we trace the history of almost all industries, from lawyers to insurance people to accountants, oftentimes they may not have started off with the best of circumstances or with any regulation. But as they grew and they matured, the need for regulation, the need for greater transparency, the need for ensuring that we have international best practice happens. And I think we are demonstrating, consistently, and certainly over the last 2 to 3 years, that I think from a political perspective, from a bureaucratic, technocratic industry standard, that we are committed to international best practices, we are transparent, we are committed to engaging with our partners. But industries operate in a geopolitical, socio-economic context. There is no direct foreign investment taking place in the OECS. There is none. The United States of America, its private sector, its government does not invest in the OECS. That's just a fact. If they invest in any CARICOM countries, it will be select countries in very specific industries. And the same goes for the European Union, the same goes for Canada. And I'm not speculating here because I can tell you in the case of Grenada, it's a very small island. In the 90s, 1 or 2 hotels were built because the World Bank said, you could diversify from agriculture and move into services. Between 1999 and 2020, no new hotel was built. We had small family Grenadian type hotels that perhaps 1 or 2 families who went to Canada and the diaspora worked in the Hilton or what have you, saved and come back and open small properties. Many of them failed because they were over leveraged. They borrowed every time there was a storm or hurricane to rebuild. We've only had investment in the hotel industry in Grenada in the last 3 years. And it's all because of the investment migration. With the exception of one, which is Silver Sands, where you had an Egyptian, so it's a North African investor who's a billionaire, who's prepared to risk 150 million US of his own money. Because billionaires may have egos and so on, and he wanted to make a statement. But even him, after that, financed his next hotel via the investment migration. So any new plant on the island, in the tourism sector, which is our largest sector, is financed through the investment migration industry. And there's been virtually no investment in any other sector in Grenada over the last 10 to 15 years. No direct foreign investment. The last time we had an American investor of any significance invest in anything in Grenada was in 1994. It was in a pork company. And they exited in 2020. Now, I'm using Grenada because it's a microcosm of the challenges we find in many of the islands. I mean, it's probably compounded in Dominica because of the kinds of natural and climatic events that Dominica has had to deal with. So there's a direct relationship between unforced migration and deliberate migration. And both of them is connected with stability and mitigating risk. The reality is for places like Sudan or North Africa or Ukraine, you have wars, you have geopolitical tensions that force people to move. Whether it's poverty, whether it's some of the terrible fishing agreements signed between African countries and the European Union, where people eventually their livelihoods as fishermen come to an end and they're forced to migrate. Places like Spain and Portugal. That's obviously forced migration. The risk we face here is if you don't have controlled investment migration that allows us to mitigate the risk of poverty, instability, crime, etc. Our partners will have to cope with the reality of forced migration. Unless we think it can't happen, you need to appreciate that 8 million people have left Venezuela. Trinidad and Tobago had to give about 150,000 Venezuelans some form of amnesty to remain in the country. There's probably 150,000 Venezuelans in Guyana. And they're 90 miles away from Grenada, and then therefore, whatever the distance is between Grenada and St. Vincent, now we can go up. So the reality is, this is an industry, in my view, that does not deserve to be threatened or attacked. If there are concerns, obviously, and I think the biggest one would perhaps be a security concern, and I'm saying perhaps here, because I think everyone is talking about the due diligence. If you are moving to electronic travel authorization, that significantly reduces the risk. I think we would certainly like the technical and financial support to put all of us in a position where we can have biometrics at our borders, where we too can ensure that our systems are all up to date and engage in advanced passenger lists, engage in an electronic travel authorization ahead. So we are operating from the same platforms, and therefore the risk mitigation measures are shared. Our security is our partner's security. But at the end of the day, this industry is not going away. Between the polarization, the rise of authoritarianism, populism, wars, energy fights, scarcity of water, tariffs, etc., the world has actually become more unstable. And so for people looking for stability, mitigating the risks that are associated, investment migration and migration, in mobility, safety, stability is an attraction. And the Caribbean, because of its diversity, its general peacefulness, its strategic location will remain an attractive position for this. And I think all of us in the industry need to perhaps stop giving ourselves a black eye by frankly speaking more positively about the industry, that whether from a political, legal, or practitioner's perspective, we are partners. So that's just my 5 cents contribution to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah.
The Honorable Philip J. Pierre.
Yes, thank you very much. I guess I have to speak. First of all, I want to thank Gaston and the organizers for having me here. I'm just from a budget where I spoke for 3 hours. So I will not speak a lot today. Sometimes it really strikes me how difficult it is to run a small island. And when I speak to my colleagues from other countries, and I say to them, I have 180,000 people home, and it's the largest population in the OCS. They are 180 people in a village. Now it's a country. 180,000 people in a country with all the issues of some other country. And if you look historically at what happened, what happens is every time we are in a space that we think will take us somewhere, we get pulled back. We were in bananas, that was doing well. Our rural space was being developed. We sent bananas to England. We made a lot of money. And suddenly they told us that there were all kind of issues for our bananas. First of all, we had about less than 3% of the market. And they said we were disrupting trade rules. we were breaking trade rules because we had less than 3% in the market. Then they said to us we had problems with our bananas had pests and disease, and we had to take it and treat it like a baby, wash it here, take it back and wash it again. Then they said it wasn't good, so we still had to go. So we lost bananas. That caused us in St. Lucia to come from about 20,000 people earning a living. Right now we have about 3,000 farmers, and these farmers only ship to the region. They ship to Antigua, St. Kitts, only to the region. Then we had discussions. They said we must move to services. And it's something strange about St. Lucia. We always are the last ones in that. We were the last ones in services. We started in offshore companies and IBCs, etc. Then they said it was money laundering, so they began to blacklist us and said that we had to have all sorts of arrangements. My inland revenue department, I have to spend more money there to deal with international agreements than I have to collect tax in the island. Because all sorts of meetings, and so we have issues there. We try, and when we jump one barrier, they tell us we have another thing to do and another thing to do. But we follow, because we want the reputation of our countries, of my country, to be intact. So we follow. So we have all sorts of regulations. Then we went into the CIP business. Again, St. Lucia was the last country. I think we've only issued as a country about 1,000 passports, 1,000 citizenships. I mean, wrong? Claude, how many? About how many? Yes, about 2,000. Literally 2,000 passports. Now, I want to understand, why would someone who is a bad actor would want to go through what I know they have to go through in St. Lucia? In St. Lucia, we have all sorts of levels. Then we have impacts, a new one has joined, impacts. Then impacts, after impacts, we have due diligence food. A whole lot. Then when the money gets to the bank, that's where the action is. The bank wants to find out. In fact, it's surprising. One day I walked in the store in the street in Miami, and I went in and I asked to open a bank account, but I didn't open it, I was just testing. And I had to do show my passport. That's it. Then, so when you get to that level, in fact, the argument and the problem in St. Lucia is that people who apply for citizenship, they say it takes too long, they wasted their time, and it actually means that St. Lucia is regressing in this regard. So why would someone, I want to answer the question, why would someone want to go through that process if they wanted to be a bad actor and knowing that they would most likely be caught at the level of due diligence that we perform in these islands? We find our programs, we should survive, and we should take it to that other level where all the people in the countries realize that this is beneficial to us, this will help us, and St. Lucia and the rest of the islands. We do not want to be any burden as far as that is concerned. We want to act like mature people, follow rules and follow regulations, but the main thing is that we need our people to enjoy a better quality of life. Our people to enjoy that. And this is the only reason why St. Lucia is in that program, so that our people can enjoy a better quality of life. Our quality of life can be improved, and all the risks that we have, the risks that we continue to have, we are in the month of May. From June, we're into a hurricane. Anytime, any of the islands could be wiped out in a few hours. That is a real thing. Now, when there's a hurricane in Dominica or against St. Lucia, actually, it's a whole of the country. It's not like when there's a hurricane in Miami, there's only one part of the country. Our size is something that we have to note. Our size. We are mini states. So I want you to consider that and see why we need a program and why we need that program to help to benefit the people of the region. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister.
If I can just make a quick intervention here. Our programs are obviously helping to unearth crooks. And I give you two cases in point. We've had about 3 situations in which these individuals slip through the cracks. But ultimately they'll be caught. There's one particular person who was operating within the dark web. This happened about a decade ago. At that time, the United States was helping us with our due diligence. And it's as a result of him literally coming above board and applying for Antiguan citizenship why he was caught. We had a recent one, a famous one with this Indian gentleman by the name of Mihail Choksi. Now, he applied for his citizenship before the information surfaced that he had literally defrauded a bank in India. Now, clearly, a situation like that, there's no way that any due diligence will pick up that. But after he got his citizenship and the information broke, we have to identify precisely who he was. We took the necessary steps to revoke his citizenship. And we're cooperating with India. Well, then again, understand he's no longer here. He's away in Belgium. You know, but I'm just trying to state here that even if you slip through, eventually they'll be caught. And these are very small countries. You can't hide in these countries, you know. You can hide in Europe, you can hide in North America, but you can't hide in Antigua. Because when it surfaced that there's this gentleman by the name of Mihail Choksi that got our citizenship, nobody here knew him. But you know what the opposition rhetoric was? Or the Prime Minister gave him citizenship. I never met the man up to this day. And that is why it's important for us to have these very frank dialogue and for international partners to understand the nature of our politics that is extremely hostile and not fact-based, and for you to be able to determine what is factual from what is fiction. But again, even where they slip through the cracks, eventually they're caught.
All right, an excellent note on which to end this session. Due to time constraints, we will forego the speed dating for today. Those of you who already have partners will be very pleased to hear that you don't have to report that you were on a speed date. All right, so that concludes the public portion of our discussions for today. We thank you so much for having joined us. Today's activities have really unearthed a plethora of issues, challenges that we have faced, are facing, but have pledged to overcome. We've heard from the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank on the regulatory framework. We've heard from the leaders of the CIP, CBI units across the territories, and we've heard from the heads of government and their representatives as well. What will happen for the rest of the day? That there will be closed sessions. The leaders of the countries will meet with several delegations. They will do that on their own in closed sessions. Please be reminded at 7 this evening, there will be a welcome cocktail at the Hodges Bay Club, the Hodges Bay Resort, actually. So that starts at 7. Please feel free to come and have a few talks and drinks on us, and just fellowship with us this evening. That starts at 7, should go until 9 before we resume activities tomorrow. So we thank you very much for joining us for a VIP day today. Our opening ceremony starts at 9 a.m. tomorrow. We will have the media here, of course, and we will have an agenda outlined for you then as well. So please join me in thanking our panelists today, all of our panelists who spoke very eloquently about the issues that they have been able to encounter. We thank certainly the Prime Ministers and their representatives for having joined us in beautiful Antigua. Continue to enjoy our hospitality.